Hello everyone, this is another one of video of AWS API Gateway. Today video show how to integrate with the Lambda function, which is most people know. But more importantly, I'm covering how to pass parameters or headers and how to modify those inside the API Gateway before pass to Lambda. Example, the most of the time we need to update parameters or headers before pass to Lambda or from Lambda. The concept is same for when you integrate with the API Gateway with other services like SQS or DynamoDB. If you are interested with any other topic of API Gateway or need to know something specific, please comment below. I'll jump as needed. Just before kickoff, as usual, please like and subscribe. It would be really appreciated. Let's start. Right, I'm in AWS console. What we're going to do, we're going to create a Lambda function and API gateway, then integrate. Once it's done, we will see how to manage parameters and headers in API gateway. Let's create a Lambda function first. Give it a name as a demo2. Keep the runtime as a Node.js. You can select any language, whatever you prefer. That's fine with the default settings. Once you click create function, it should take a couple of seconds to create your Lambda function. Right, seems like our Lambda function got created. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go to code and do a bit of changes. So what we're gonna do, we return the same object whoever called this Lambda function, and do a console log the event, so we can see in the CloudWatch what's the data it's coming from the API gateway. Let's deploy. Our Lambda function is ready. Now let's go to API gateway. You can search API gateway over here. Click on create API. What I'm selecting REST API, the public REST API option, third option, and give it a name as a demo2. Keep the endpoint as original. Create API. If you want to get the step-by-step guidance of the API gateway, I do have a previous video. Please go and have a look if you need to get some basic understanding of API gateway. Our API gateway is created, which is demo2, as you can see in the left side. What we're gonna do, we're gonna create a resource and create a post endpoint. Click on the create resource, give it as users, and let's create a endpoint. In this case, I'm selecting a post endpoint, and which integrate with the Lambda function we created. Over here, we can select the region, default region, and then select our endpoint, our Lambda function, which is demo2. Keep all the settings as default and click on create method. Right, so our Lambda function got created and API got created, and these are integrated. What you can see if you click on the post, and then the integration request, if you click on the integration request, or you can select the second tab which has say what's the integration type, which is Lambda, and this is region, and this is the integrated Lambda function. Right, so now what we're going to do, we will do let's see whether this is working. Either you can select the test tab over here to test this API, or you can use any client tool. What I'm doing, I'm using Postman to create a call the API gateway from the Postman. What we need to do, we need to deploy this API gateway. We deploy this API gateway with the new stage environment. Right, we got the invoke URL. Now let's go to Postman and hit this endpoint. You need to select the invoke URL. Go back to Postman. You can get the free Postman and create in a new request. So what I'm going to create a request, which is endpoint is users, the verb is post, and let's save it. If you like, you can save it, and let's hit the endpoint. Seems like our endpoint is working. We got the 200 status code with the empty object. So if we go back to our lambda function again, demo2, what does it do? It's returning the whatever it's the event it's coming. Let's try sending some payload. So if I go to body in postman and select the row, and let's try sending a sample JSON object. Let's see the ID and the name. So if I hit this, what we see response is come to 200. Okay, a little bit bigger and get more spaces. Right, we got the response as a body same the same body we sent. So if I go back and have a look the logs of this lambda, go to lambda. So this is the last request. What you can see here, we go, the event is the object. Now let's see, can we send any headers? If I go to headers and select, let's say we are sending the client ID 3, 4, 5, 6 and hit endpoint. If I go back to CloudWatch and see the last response, this is 1756. Yeah, that's the one. So you can see the event object does not have any headers. That means we are sending the header to the postman and it's hit the API gateway, but API gateway does not pass that header to lambda. So let's see how do we pass that header. Right, back in the AWS console, what we're gonna do, we're gonna update the action method, which is the post action method, and go to integration request, which is the second tab, and click on edit. Scroll down and as a request body pass to, click on the first item, which is when there's no template, which is template defined, which is recommended, and click on the mapping template and a new mapping template, adding a new mapping template. I mentioned as a content type as a JSON. You can mention any content type as you need. So whichever caller send, you can select over here. You can add here. So what I'm doing, I'm copying a script over here. Let's go a little bit. Right. This script is written in a template language, something called template language. I'll keep a link in the comment section if you want to learn further down furthermore. So this is a link in how to create template language and how to work with that template language. So over here, let's go one by one. Let's see what does this template do. It's creating the object, the method object. It's basically creating this is the object which passed to lambda function. It's this object contained with the method, body, and the headers. So basically the method body, the method which is fetched from the context, as you can see, it's getting from the context.http method, and the body from the whole object come in the payload, and this is how you can get using a $, which get the whole payload. And finally the headers object, how the header object is created, looping through the input headers. You can see over here, header is a key value, and the key will be the actual name, and the value will be fetching from the getting the call get method. As you can see, it's passing the name and get the actual value. This is how you get all the headers and pass back to the lambda function. Let's see this in action. What I'm doing, I'm saving the object. Let's say zoom in, zoom out, and save it. As we did some changes, I need to redeploy this change into dev environment. Right, go back to Postman. What I'm doing this time, I'm click on send. Right, so this time what we got, we get lots of data, not just a body, we get even for the some headers. As you can see that we got the body and the headers. Let's see, our custom header is a client ID which is already there. If you add another one, it will be, let's say client ID 2, let's say 6666, and which should come in the return response. Yes, that seems like fine. But this, in most cases, what we need to do, we don't need to send all the headers in a template. For example, if I go to templates, go to post action, click on integration and go to edit, and over here what's going to happen, it's send all the headers which come to API gateway, but we don't need to send all the headers. We are interested in the custom headers we are sending. So let's see how we achieve that. Right, so what we're gonna do, we say we don't need a method, still we need a body, and we don't need to send all the headers. What we interesting, only the custom header we are passing, which is custom header is, let's say we are sending only the client ID. We just interested in the client ID. So what we're gonna do, we can remove all the bit, and let's say we are pasting here. Right, over here, let's say either you can send the same header, or you can change the header name into test ID 1. So this is the beauty of the template landing or the conversion transfer part in the API gateway. That doesn't matter whatever the headers client send, you can manipulate, you can change the headers, even you can drop the headers, or you can change the headers name and pass to the Lambda, which is your business logics run. So what we, in this case, what we are doing, we are sending only the client header. So Postman send the client ID, which is a header, and we are changing into test ID. Right. Let's see how this works. So we are almost done. We are templating here. Right. Okay. Now keep it saved. And we need to deploy it again. Dev. So in theoretically, what we should get only the body and the only the header with the different name. Right. Let's see. Yes. Here we go. So we do not get all the headers, the default headers, but we interesting in the client ID. We are sending the client ID as a header, but we are changing the header into different. That's why we got a test ID. If I go back to our Lambda function and refresh, check the logs. If we go to very down, you can see the event is, the body is this, the header is test ID 1. That's cool, right? Let's see what the another option is in the Lambda function. Lambda function with the API gateway is, you can validate some request parameter. So let's say the API is expecting, or Lambda is expecting something called client ID, which is we should provide in the payload, in the header when you do the Postman request. So that kind of, let's see how that kind of validation happen. Currently what's going to happen if I do not send a client ID, let's say I'm not sending, I untick. If I do here, yeah, it's still my Postman it's working, it's get the 200, the header ID is empty. What I want to do, I want to reject this request through API gateway. Rather, I don't want to let goes to Lambda, I need to block in the API gateway. That's a validation. So let's see how we can do validation on the request. Right, I'm back in AWS console and click on the request method, which is the first tab. Click on edit, and what we need to, you need to go HTTP request header and add a header. Let's say in this case what we say the client ID. Over here what we can say, oh, it's required. If I click on the required, whoever called this API gateway should provide the client ID as a header. Let's try that. Save it. And one thing I need to mention, once you're done, you need to do another change. Most likely people miss. I'll emphasize this. If you click on edit again, yes, we added the request header, and plus you need to select on this drop down request validator as a validate body, query string, and header. You can select whichever you want to validate. In this case, we say body, query string, and header. So what does it do? You can add another maybe query string. Let's say you want to send a query, the API is expecting a query string and the client must provide. So in this case, you can add a query string over here too. Let's try with the header what we add, which is client ID. Save it. Then mapping in here. No, what's gonna do? Oh, this one need to be, because it's empty, I need to remove the empty one, empty record. Let's go copy. Seems like I go back something glitch. Go to postman again, method request, click on edit. It's there. Now save it. No, it's seems like it's a AWS some caching or glitch, temporary glitch. Right, as we did some changes, we are deploying again. Dev. It's done. Let's go back to our client tool, which is postman. Try to hit. Right, seems like okay. Sometimes what's going to happen a little bit with the caching issue, it takes some couple of seconds to update AWS. Until that, sometimes you get the old responses. As you can see, now we are not sending the client ID in the header, so we get the error. So if I send it, the client ID, here we go, that's working perfectly. So same thing you can add it as a parameter. For example, if you want to validate some parameter, for example, in the API gateway requesting expecting some parameter, let's say param1, it's a required, then you can go and update the resource under resource again and the method request and click on edit. You can add a query string parameter which is required as a required. Then if the client doesn't provide this parameter, it will invalidate the request and it doesn't pass to the Lambda itself. So that is how you validate the parameter, and you can change the parameter and headers, even for the headers. I'll come back to again. Right, there could be some cases you want to do some business logic in a template mapping. So let's say, for example, if I go to edit and template mapping, and this header test ID 1, in some cases you need to get it from the headers, and sometimes you need to get, let's say you want to get from the param, like if the client provide the particular parameter in as a param or query string, we need to assign that query string into header test ID, otherwise get from header. That kind of logic is still possible in a template language. So a little bit bigger. So what we need to do, let's say I'm pasting some code. The very first one, let's say you are passing the param1 in a query string, or the second one, it's the client ID come from header. Let's say we want to prefer this bit. Let's say if the param1 it's not null, that means the customer provide the param1 in the query string, we need to assign that param1. This one should be here, which is param1. Param1 is sorry, param1 is not empty. This one, okay, the param1 is empty. Then we take it from the header. If the param1 is not empty, it's getting from the param1. Then we can assign this client ID into here. Right. So yeah, it's very simple. This is a template language. We can do lots of logic in here. So what's going to do, if I save it and redeploy and go back to postman and see I'm not sending param, or I'm sending only the client ID. If I send the client ID, yes, we got the 1235. What's going to happen if I add a param one? It's a 600. What's going to happen? Test ID should be changed into 6 or whatever, the 666 or 66. Right? You can see if I send a param one, we get the particular value. Otherwise, it's taken from the header. Right, the last thing is, let's say you don't need to do any mapping. You want to send the whatever the payloads come from client to the Lambda through API gateway. So if you want to do that, what you need to do, you need to go to integration request and click on edit, and there's something called Lambda Proxy integration. So if I enable this, what you're gonna see, you don't have any option to create a template or any mapping. So what this guy does, whatever things come from Postman, it's sent to a Lambda. So let's save it. Let's see what comes into Lambda and deploy. In this case, you don't need to do any template mapping or any customization. Go back to my Postman and click on send. Right, so you get the internal error. Seems like it's working. See something wrong. Let's see what's the issue. If we go back to our Lambda function, sorry, Lambda CloudWatch. So I'm cleaning up all the logs, and I'll do the again Postman request because there are so many logs come over here. We got a Lambda. It's hitting the Lambda. Let's see what's the internal error in the Lambda logs. Right, here we go. It's hit the Lambda. You can see the Lambda function, the event is has lots of data. So that's mean it send a lots of more information from the API gateway. API gateway doesn't do any template mapping. It send all the data as it is. You can see it says it's hitting the users, endpoints, the headers. Header should have our client ID, even our param. Currently, let's say maybe we are not sending the param. Let's see, have a look. Let's see the param 2 and give it a refresh. If I go back again, give it a refresh. Right, if you check the very last request and see, our query string should be there. Let's search. It's something like 666. Oh, here we go. So you can see our query string is goes through the API gateway, our client IDs goes, and everything is there. But why we do get internal error? So as you can see, if you go to the Lambda is executed without any issues, no errors at all. What we can see, if I go to let's go to and have a look our API gateway logs. So enabling the gateway logs, I have a small video if you want to quick go and have a look. This is our logs for our API gateway, and let's see what's the issue. This is our last request. If you go very down, what we can see, seems like it's executed 200. It's fine, but let's see our Postman request. It says 502 bad gateway. Hopefully it should cache. Let's have a look. Still it's 200. Let's give a second to get the log. Sometimes getting the access log for the API gateway is slow. Let's give a sec and come back. Right, I found the issue. Basically what's gonna happen, the logs I check, which is for the different API logs, we haven't enabled API logs for our resource, the one that we created. So how to enable? You need to go to the staging, click on the logs and tracing, edit, and select the full request. In this case I'm checking all the requests and save it. Right, then it should comes our logs. It should create a logs file, access log file in a CloudWatch. Now I'm go back and click on couple of times. I'm getting the same error. Let's wait until the logs get created and see the logs after that. Right, I'm back into my logs group for API gateway. This is my API gateway, and see we have a few logs. This is today, and click on at the very last one, the recent one. And if you go further down, what you can see the 502 status. And what they said, it's getting the response from the Lambda. It is 200. So as you can see, send request to our Lambda, which is, you can see this is our Lambda demo 2 Lambda. It's allocate a little bit bigger, and it's get the response 200 response from Lambda. Then what they do, they try to do some transformation. When try to do transformation, that's where the error occurred. It says malform Lambda Proxy response, and which is 502. That's why the postman get error response. That means the Lambda is perfectly working and it's written in something, but the response coming from the Lambda, it's not readable to API gateway. API gateway is expecting something, but Lambda doesn't respond. That's the main issue. What's the how to fix that? If you go to the Lambda function and code, and what really API gateway expecting is a proper object which come with the HTTP response. It's expecting something this. Rather than sending the event, it's expecting a response with this is best 64 encoded, the property and the status codes and some headers and the body. You can send any body if you like. You can say testing and any headers if you want to send any headers. Let's say test 1. This is a test message, but it's expecting a object. For example, this one, if I go here, a proper HTTP object from the Lambda. So what I'm doing, I'm deploying. Looks good. If I go back to Postman and let's try give a cert. Right, here we go. You can see we get the correct response, which is 200, and the body, whatever we sending in over here, will be passed into our caller. So plus you can see if we click on the headers in the Postman, we should see the headers we are sending, which is a custom header test 1. We are sending over here. We can see the header. This is how you can integrate API gateway with the Lambda through the proxy. So you don't need to do any template mapping. It's work as it is, but you need to be careful when it's Lambda should respond proper response. If we go do, for example, if I delete this guy and if I deploy and go back to Postman, we should get an error after a few seconds because it's really expecting this one. Seems like it's still caching, but you can give a shot. Like basically it's expecting the proper object. Right, let's recap the important points. First, you can change the headers and parameters inside the API gateway using a template mapping. You can use custom logic like if else inside the mapping template. Then you can validate the header parameters in API gateway before hitting the other integration points, next integration point. And finally, you can use Lambda Proxy to send all the parameters, headers, body to integration services without any template. But need to make sure if you are integrating with the Lambda response should be proper HTTP response with the status code. That's pretty much for today. Hope you enjoy, and again, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. If there are any thoughts, please comment below. See you on next video. Thanks.